Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Andrew Postecoglou used an expression in his press conference today. It was about injuries. He was asked whether he could see a light at the end of the tunnel when it came to injuries. And his response was, every time I've seen the light at the end of the tunnel, it's usually been an oncoming train. I don't think he could have picked a more apt expression to describe Tottenham Hotspur. It was about injuries, but I think for all of us, it's probably an expression that really perfectly encapsulates what it's like to report on, to be a fan of Tottenham Hotspur in probably recent decades, to be honest. Just every time you think something good, something nice is happening, something happens that flips it in the opposite direction. Like this video was really going to be just a nice kind of video talking about what was a really lovely end to last night's match. Because, there was a lot of great stuff happening that last 20 minutes from a fan's perspective that we could enjoy. And I think everyone leaving the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium last night, it was very late at night and we'd had train problems and things like that ahead of the game. We left the stadium thinking, oh, that was nice, wasn't it? That was nice. And then as the course of today has gone on, the nice things kind of stop. Right, where do we start? I think we probably need to start off with Mathys Tel news, which, by the time you watch this, will have been everywhere anyway. So Spurs have failed in an attempt to sign Mathys Tel from Bayern Munich. Bayern were open to what appears to be a roughly £50 million move for the player. He, the 19-year-old himself, was not entirely sold on a permanent exit. I think Bayern would have liked the money. He has often spoken, to be fair, about wanting to become a Bayern legend, and kind of next season being a big one, I think, for him at the club. And just really this season, things haven't really panned out for him. He's had a lot of time on the bench, not many appearances. I don't think he's even scored a goal this season. And the idea, I think, for him was get out, get on loan, have a bit of a kind of a refresh. And kind of Spurs went in there, I think, believing, they could get a permanent deal done for a player who's a very talented young player, another teenager. And they probably thought they had stolen a march on the other clubs because other clubs maybe were looking at a loan deal and Spurs were actually going in there with a kind of a no doubt structured financial deal for the player. And reportedly, according to stories in Germany, Daniel Levy actually flew out there to try and convince Tel to join Tottenham Hotspur. Feel like we've kind of come away from the whole Postecoglou belief of if they didn't want to join, they shouldn't need convincing. Maybe that's kind of an indication of where Spurs are at right now. But yes, if true, Daniel Levy flew out there to return home with nada, with absolutely nothing. I guess Spurs don't really do loan deals for young players if there's not an option at the end of it, because I suppose in their mind they're I guess developing a young player for another club. The interesting thing will now be if the other clubs that have been looking at him, like United, Villa, Chelsea, clubs like that, if they're able to sign him with an option to buy, then it's going to just all be on Spurs and him refusing to join Spurs, really, or rejecting them. At least I haven't waited until January 31st. Just, honestly, my word, I'm sure you've anyone that listened to my last video knows my frustration with this transfer window and the previous videos as well. I just find it mad. And, technically, this is their second high-profile rejection, really, because they also had Randall Kolo Muani as well, who went to Juventus instead from PSG. So they're stacking up these kind of quite public, high-profile, embarrassing rejections. And thanks, but no thanks. Notes. I'm sure they're not getting notes. It's a callback there to was it Rivaldo, wasn't it, many years ago? You would hope that would spark them into more effective action in the next couple of days that we have left. 62 hours or so, a bit longer. because, let's be honest, been a shambles this transfer window thus far in terms of outfield players. It really has. I just so loathe this. I feel like with Postecoglou, there's so many times in press conferences, you see him go to say something, and he goes like, because he just kind of knows, he's just repeating a million times over what he's already said. And for me, that would be pretty much repeating what he's had to repeat. That he is just, the squad needs help, the squad needs help, the squad needs help. Help, the squad needs help. You just feel like saying it, shouting it to the rafters for anyone that will listen. And it has not been coming. And, here they are, messing about right at the end of the window, trying to sign another investment for the now, but also for the future signing, and it not coming off. Look, he would have been a really exciting kind of signing for the future, potentially for the now as well. He did some exciting stuff for Bayern last season. It hasn't been able to really get into the swing of things for them this season. There is a part of me that wonders, would he have been the right player for Spurs now in the situation they're going through? I guess you've got Archie Gray and Lucas Bergwijn have been thrown into a tough situation and they're kind of shining and coming through for Spurs, so maybe he would have as well. I am also intrigued to know kind of whether various people who were raging about it were also saying, stop signing teenagers, sign senior players now. Because that's kind of where I'm at. Look, I definitely would never say no to signing an exciting player for the future as well, but that's the key. It has to be as well. I think Spurs need some kind of senior experienced players to help them through this current time. Even if it's just on loan, I'd like to see them bring in an experienced head. We're going to talk about one as potential for a centre-back. But it's a strange situation right now. And I don't think I've ever seen, or as a fan or a reporter, kind of a period at the club where they're so intent on signing teenagers. It's kind of weird. It's like, well, it's not weird because I think it's just investments. I think that's what it is. But they splash out on someone like Solanke, and yes, he's injured now, but he clearly was exactly what they needed on a bigger level. And it was almost like that just was your one-off. Be happy and grateful for that, please. Talking about teenagers, I wonder now whether they go for another one with Tel not being on the table. And that's Tyler Dibling at Southampton. 18 years old, had a breakthrough season with Southampton, very highly sought after. Same as telling that there's a lot of clubs looking at him and considering a move. Bayern, ironically, I think are one of them. He's actually got an ankle injury right now. I think he's out for a couple more weeks. But 4 goals, 2 assists in 24 matches in the Premier League. No, it's not just in the Premier League. In this season, anyway, all competitions. Very unclear whether Southampton would sanction a mid-season move. I would imagine he's one that, if anyone wants to get him, you're kind of having a steal a March and he comes in the summer. But that's of no benefit to Postecoglou right now. If things continue to go downhill for him, he's not going to even be in a position to kind of profit from anyone that's signed for next season. I'm intrigued to see kind of where they move now in terms of which players, whether like kind of how far their list do they go down? Do we see short-term options just to plug the gap? Do we see kind of other players that they really liked as well? They just maybe push a bit more aggressively for. We'll see. There's some really interesting ones out there, aren't there? They could still go for. I really like Brian Mbeumo. I think he's, really interesting kind of player. And for me, I would love to see Spurs go for someone like him. I know there's been talk about Newcastle being interested in him, that Spurs do have an interest in him, but that's, for me, is a kind of a big push towards the end of the window to kind of help the squad. Because that's what Postecoglou keeps saying, not helping him, helping the squad. I don't know. What do I know? I just think it's absolutely ridiculous that we're at this period in the window and they're still scrabbling around like this, trying to kind of just grab what they can. It just feels so kind of the stereotype of Spurs in transfer windows. They kind of had a few windows where they moved early, they got things kind of going. And even last January, yes, I know people will have qualms now over the quality of Werner. And some people have qualms over the quality of Radu Dragic, even though he's only 22 years old. But at least they were getting things lined up and moving quickly. And you feel like now they've had just as much time to plan, if not more. And to be in this scenario is just... it's mad. It's absolutely mad. Sorry, this is kind of the period now we're in where this video could kind of be out of date by the time I finish it. So I'm kind of having to keep an eye on everything, really. Because, yeah, it is. Honestly, I was going to do this video a little while ago and it's kind of been putting off, just checking on some various bits and pieces around certain things. Honestly, we're so drained. The media kind of pack that cover Spurs regularly, in the press conference today, we were all as drained as Postecoglou. Afterwards, we're just sitting there like, what happened? What are we writing from this? It's just been this kind of... this is the thing, with the ridiculousness of the transfer window in the background, they've just had so many fixtures and a press conference every 2 to 3 days as well. It's just been mad. And just Tottenham, like I say, just a crazy, crazy club. He was asked today about transfers, whether he was excited about the remainder of the transfer window, and Postecoglou said, I was looking at the date, I was hoping it would be all over today, but apparently it's extended till Monday. So we'll see what happens over the next couple of days. He wasn't being serious, clearly. I'm sure he knew that it closes on February the 3rd because it's a weekend. It's an interesting one, actually. I don't know the reason why it doesn't close today, because today being the 31st and it not being a weekend, I don't know. I'm sure there's a reason. I'm sure there's a more official reason that people more intelligent than me are aware of. Yeah. But yeah. But he said that. He was also asked about Tel. This was obviously way before it all started to come out about the fact that he'd rejected Spurs. He was asked, have you heard anything more about him? He said, not a great deal. I usually find out at the tail end of this stuff what's going on. Obviously, we're exploring some opportunities in the last couple of days of the window to see what we can do, but nothing's across my desk yet. Because this is the other part of it, is it kind of felt like in his first summer transfer window, with no sporting director in place, Postecoglou was quite heavily involved with, wasn't it, Leonardo Gabinini, the chief scout then, and Levy, in getting players in. And he was kind of, I guess, getting a lot of the kind of players he wanted in. And you could probably argue that that's been, well, I mean, they've only had three, this is their fourth window since. It's probably the most successful window they've had, was the one where Postecoglou was able to kind of have a stronger influence on it. They brought in a lot of kind of quick players through the door, as in they brought players quickly through the door, got the kind of players he wanted and moved fast. Whereas it almost feels like now, with him just kind of having to concentrate more on the head coach stuff and so many fixtures, I don't know. It's a theory. I'm literally thinking this up on the spot. Maybe it hasn't worked as well. I don't know. Please let me know in the comments what you think about that. But yeah, so he was asked about Tel. He said that. I asked him because if you're not aware, Radu Dragic, we'll talk about it a little bit more depth a little bit later on, but Radu Dragic injured his knee in the game last night against Elfsborg. They're waiting for scans back on that to see exactly what's happened there inside his knee. And I asked him, if his knee is, not good, are you going to move in the window, the remaining days of the window, for another centre-back? Because obviously you've either got the choice. Do you go with Gray continue to be a centre-back with Ben Davies and Mickey van der Ven, and Romero will be back soonish. I've got a little bit more on that because I asked him about injuries. Or do you go for a new centre-back? And he said, let's get it right. I want to get the words exactly right. He said, I think depending on the extent of Radu's injury, it might be an area we need to look at. And certainly this weekend, we are exploring some options. So one of those options appears to be Fikayo Tomori, who you might remember, who used to be at Chelsea, didn't he? He's now at AC Milan, 27 years old, got a bit of pace about him. Can play as a right back as well. He's played 21 times for Milan this season. He actually captained them once. I'm trying to remember which game it was, maybe against Lazio. I'm trying to remember. But yeah, mostly he's kind of had spells on the bench this season. Speaking to some people that cover Italian football, it hasn't been a good season for him. Hasn't been particularly great. And yeah, I think there was always a suggestion that Tomori was one that they were going to potentially look at because he ticks some of the boxes for a Postecoglou centre-back. But yeah, not been in the greatest of form. And before I was coming on this, I saw some of the Italian media quoting potentially 30 million euros valuation, which is 25 million pounds. It's not my money. That seems a lot of money for a season that hasn't gone so well for him. And yeah, an interesting one just in itself, really, because I wouldn't imagine Tomori comes in a bit part role. For me, you'd kind of look at that maybe as a loan with an option at the end of it if they feel they want to continue the partnership, I guess, as it were. But also there's kind of bigger implications, I suppose, about bringing him in, about Romero's long-term future, maybe Dragishin's long-term future, Ben Davies' long-term future. It's an interesting one. I could absolutely understand it on a short-term basis, but if you're going longer-term and you're paying a fee, it kind of has knock-on effects as well. Look, at this point, I'm not turning down any extra cover in that defence because it is, they've got a couple players back. We had Mickey van der Ven last night. But the way Spurs are, as Ange said, light at the end of the tunnel often ends up being an oncoming train. And who knows? So, yeah, absolutely wouldn't turn it down. It would just be a really interesting one if they were going to pay that much for someone that, might not be one of their first choice centre-backs. But hey, again, so many competitions, certainly not knocking it down. As in, I'm not knocking the idea of going for it. Just surprising to me, slightly, that figure. But anyway, we'll see what happens with Tomori. I'm sure there's other options as well. There's Italian media suggesting that he hasn't kind of given any green light to that. So it could end up that they do it again and they agree a deal. And there's, I always find it, I don't know why I said that. I always find it strange that clubs go to the lengths they go to and it becomes quite a public thing before they've got cast iron assurances or even 90%, 80% assurances that the player will come to them. I think we always kind of have this idea, don't we? We all say this thing like, well, they wouldn't have got this far if they, weren't sure the player was coming to them or wants to come to them. Seems with Tottenham, not always the case, which is mad. Absolutely mad. I mean, yeah, very strange. Some more Tomori stuff coming out now. Nothing new. But there you go. So Tomori, we'll see. Obviously, Premier League experience, that's a benefit as well. That's what I was saying earlier about kind of teenagers and more senior players. He is a senior player. Like I said, he's captain AC Milan once this season as well. And he's coming in fully aware of the Premier League, the physicality, the pace and what it requires. So yeah, that's that would work in that respect. I asked Postecoglou today as well. I wanted to get like a real clarity on the timeline of return dates for all the other players because that's quite important as well when it comes to transfer window, but just mainly for our own knowledge of when these players are coming back. I used his cabs off the rank expression that he uses. And he said they're all kind of around the same time, around 10 days' time. We're talking about Vicario. That's obviously well ahead of schedule. Johnson. This is his quote. Vicario, Johnson, Destiny, Wilson, Timo. Romero is a bit of a tricky one. We're not really sure yet. There is still some work he needs to do. Certainly all of those guys, I think of the long-term ones, apart from Dom Solanke, who's probably a week behind them, the rest of them are slated to be back in the next week to 10 days to be available, which is great. That's a massive kind of sudden influx of players being available. He later added Maddison. I've got some quotes coming. He later added Maddison to that first group of names. He'd just forgot to mention him. So that in itself suddenly makes the squad a lot stronger. But of course, we know with Spurs, who knows? It could be re-injuries, things like that. So I also kind of followed up on that and asked him with Romero, is it a setback? What's exactly happened there? He said it's just a slower healer with him, and it's one we're looking at on a week-to-week basis. Again, he's been out for quite a while. Like with all the other long-term ones, we're just taking our time. And this was when he was asked about could he see the light at the end of the tunnel, and he said, as we know, I hope so, mate, but every time I've seen the light at the end of the tunnel, it's usually been an oncoming train. We seem to be losing players as we get them back. If we can get, if not all back, just even 2 or 3 of them might. So we saw the impact Mickey had last night, and I didn't include Madders in that as well. So Madders is probably around the same time. So if we get 2 or 3 of those back in sort of 10 days' time, then maybe a few days later, a couple of the others. I mean, that's why I'm trying to manage the minutes of the guys we have available, because we don't want to lose anyone else. But again, best laid plans, we obviously tried to shield Radu last night because he didn't play the first half, because he played a lot of football, and then he comes on and he gets injured. So again, you can't plan for these things. Hopefully, we've got a big week coming up for sure starting Sunday. We're going to have to do it with this sort of core group of players. We've just got to be careful about how we go about it. And that's it, isn't it? It's like, you could go into Brentford knowing you've got to win a Premier League game because the form is so rotten in the Premier League, and you could end up pushing too far a player that you need for the second leg of a semi-final on Thursday night. It's mad, isn't it? Someone's just asked me on Twitter, who's got more minutes, Big Ange at press conferences or Decky playing time? It's got to be close. It's got to be close. More press conferences. Probably not as long as some of them. So probably Decky still. I think Porro's still the one that's played the most. Most minutes. What else was he asked? He was asked, now, does he believe his squad was truly big enough to deal with 4 competitions today? He was asked that. I think it was George Sessions from PA asked that. He said, look, I guess people looking at it from the outside will say, that has probably been the case, as in it's not big enough. But we've just had to deal with a real extreme situation, which unfortunately, once we got hit with what we got hit with, is then very hard to rectify on the run. We obviously got some significant injuries early on, which hampered our progress, and then we had to rely on a small group of players to get us through, and that then burdened them. It's kind of been this vicious cycle of us not being able to get out of the cycle we were in. So when you sit here now and say maybe we could have had a more robust squad, but I think the volume of games that clubs are playing, we've been to an extreme situation, but a lot of clubs are facing similarities in Europe. If you're in Europe these days, particularly Champions League or Europa, it is tough to maintain a competitiveness with squad numbers and a level of performance. Obviously, we've done well in the Carabao Cup, which has added even more games to us, and all these things have added a burden, but there has been some lessons learned for sure. What lessons? That's probably something that definitely needs following up. It was the last question, I think, of the press conference, so it kind of couldn't be followed up, but that definitely needs to be looked at. What lessons have been learned? Because we're now on January the 31st and they haven't signed any outfield players. You would imagine that means that in the summer window, they're going to build a bigger squad for next season, but that might not benefit, Postecoglou. He may not be there. More people in Italian media criticize or praising if Milan get anything over 20 million euros for him. There you go. That would signal panic buy, wouldn't it? That really would, if they pay it over the odds. The irony is, gotta call myself out on it. In the last video, I did say sometimes if you're just going to get deal done, you might have to pay over the odds sometimes. And I'm very aware I've said that a couple of days ago. But I guess my thinking was that had to be on the top players that they really wanted. But I don't know. What do I know? I'm not a sporting director, club chairman, or anything like that. Where were we before I was interrupted by that annoying tweet that came up? Yeah, lessons learned. That was it, wasn't it? I don't know if lessons are ever truly learned at Spurs. I feel like we've kind of been here before in transfer windows, and I don't think lessons are learned. I don't think lessons are learned at Spurs in a lot of ways, but transfers being one of them. I want to talk about more positive stuff. Let's talk about last night's match and what did have a thoroughly enjoyable end to the evening. It really did. It was a fairy tale ending in a way that just wasn't in the script. I didn't think originally. It kind of felt like a night. It was a little bit difficult, a little bit tougher than they probably expected. Elfsborg came and sat back and really tried to not give up any space in behind them whatsoever. It was a bit of a grind, although they had some chances in the first half. There was another injury, like I said, Dragishin. But it kind of turned into something a little bit magical towards the end. And it feels weird to be talking about something magical after kind of whinging for the last 25 minutes or so. But it was. And anyone inside that stadium felt that. It was kind of special to be there because of these young players having this incredible night. It's a special moment to see one player score their first goal for the club. To witness two do it is pretty remarkable. But to watch three players do that on the same night, and a European night under the lights as well at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, it was something that I think a lot of people are going to remember for a long time, especially if these players, go on to have big careers at Spurs. And obviously Mikey Moore's the best place of the three to do it, but who knows, all three could, or certainly other ones in that trio could do it. And yeah, it just was after recent weeks, it was an end to the game that was just like, lovely. That's really great. Even my match report, Spurs were 3-0 up, didn't concede a goal. Yes, we can talk about the quality of Elfsborg, absolutely. But it was just nice to write the things I had to do post-match and not have to change anything because it was there and it was done and it was tied up. With every goal, I think everyone just started enjoying it. It became a bit of a party atmosphere towards the end. Even Postecoglou, with each passing goal from the three young players, his grin was getting bigger and bigger with each one. And all the long line of injured Spurs players on the bench, all in their kind of casual clothing, each one of them applauded with each goal as the fans sang these these young players' names. It was lovely. At the final whistle, Sonny, he'd come off at half-time, was part of the planned sub, went around the pitch and sought out Dane Scarlett, Damola Ajayi and Mikey Moore, and he gave them these kind of big bear hugs. Mikey Moore especially just kind of sank into his arms. I think it was part tiredness, probably part emotion as well. You kind of forget he's 17 years old, and I thought that when he was doing his kind of knee slide celebration in front of the South Stand. All three goals in front of the South Stand as well. I mean, how cool is that for them? I did feel like he looked quite emotional. I would be emotional at my age if I'd managed to do that. How it must feel as a 17-year-old, it would be off the chart. It would be incredible. The goals themselves. First you had Dane Scarlett, 20 years old, leaping, really lovely header to head home Kulusevski's terrific in-swing cross. We've seen him do that so many times, but great ball, great timed run, great header, and he just knocks it. No chance for the goalkeeper, lovely header. But then within a couple of minutes of Ajayi coming on for his debut, he does his lovely direct run, sees some space, comes in for the right flank, knocks it into Scarlett's feet. Scarlett just kind of feints to go one way, leaves the ball for him, and Ajayi takes it on and buries this left-footed shot inside the right-hand post. Beautiful. Absolutely lovely goal. It was a goal of a player that, has been playing senior football for years, let alone someone that's come on a couple of minutes ago for their debut for the club. And then Mikey Moore puts the cherry on top of the cake. I can't try to remember now if he won the ball back or whether he just kind of got through an awkward tackle or not. But anyway, picks the ball up midway, I'd say, in the Elfsborg half, surges forward down the middle, kind of gets away from a couple of people across, and then hits a lovely low finish. All three goals were brilliant. They were all clinical, all where nowhere near the goalkeeper could get them. Just superb. And yeah, I just that must be a dream though for these players in the academy. All you probably dream of is to one day score a goal for your football club, and to do so in front of that big stand as well. And they're living their dream. They lived it out last night. It was incredible. There's so much more to come, hopefully. But just in that moment, doing what they did, they would have played those moments over and over in their head and dreams as children. I mean, Mikey Moore technically is still a child. He's not 18 yet. And I love stuff like this because, anyone that kind of knows my background with this, just reporting Spurs in general, is that I kind of try to do it as a whole as much as I can. And that, can involve covering a lot of academy stuff as well. Not as much women's stuff as I'd like to. I'd absolutely admit that. It's I try to keep an eye on it and try and do an article or two a week on it now is what we're trying to do, which I'm really happy about. But I just think it's a sheer volume of games. It's just madness to trying to be across it all. But certainly, with the academy stuff, I've been doing that for a fair few years now, and I know how much it means for the academy as a whole, for hundreds of people when a player makes their debut, let alone scores a goal. Let alone 3 of them score their first goals for the club. And yeah, I mean, you're looking at the families around those players. You're talking about the coaches that, the under-21s coach, Wayne Burnett, the under-18s coach, Stuart Lewis, but also everyone around them, like, Bradley Allen with the under-18s as well. And I think a couple of them kind of mentioned Jermaine Defoe as well, previously with the under-18s and what he did. And that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg. You've got other assistant coaches, support staff, sports science staff, fitness staff, diet, people that do the food, and stuff like that around the club, people that transport them everywhere to games and stuff. There's so many people that have played their part along their paths. And it's celebrated like a huge win for the academy when a player makes their first team debut. And yeah, for them all to have scored, to have one debut and 3 goal scorers for the first time for the club, I think it will have been enjoyed last night. But I think maybe it'll only be at the end of the season they'll look back and think that was brilliant. That's fantastic. That's what we're there for as an academy. When there's an injury crisis, or there's players to come in and even. Not just an injury crisis, producing players that, regardless of the injuries, are there that can be top players. And we obviously hope Mikey Moore's going to be that. More Tomori stuff going as we speak. Spurs apparently, according to reports in Italy, going in at more of the 22 million euros level. Going up to 25 with bonuses, which, 30 sounded a bit mad for me, but there you go. I asked Postecoglou about having the 3 young players scoring their goals and what it meant for the academy as well as the club as a whole. And he said it was made in Tottenham tonight. It was brilliant for the club, and I'm sure there are academy coaches and players who won't sleep tonight because they're pretty excited. We've got a big week coming up, and we've got to try to manage the load of our players and try to protect them. We kind of knew we'd have to rely on some young players tonight, and all the way through this campaign, to be honest, I thought they stood up really well. The whole group played well, but we're going to need some young boys to make an impact, and not just the 3 goal scorers. We had a couple of 18-year-olds in there as well who continue to drive us on. So it's a great night for the club and something the whole academy should be proud of. I think it's a proud moment for the club itself. That's what academies are for. That's what those 3 boys and others who have played for us and were probably on the terraces at one time. So our fans can relate to that. We're in a tough spot in the league, obviously, but I think that will be hugely enjoyable for everyone. Just the fact that 3 young boys, 3 Tottenham lads, have scored on a European night. I think it's just great for the club. My mind is now on Sunday and trying to make sure we get our league form back to where it should be. It was cool. It was a really kind of enjoyable end to the game. And I think someone asked on Twitter whether I kind of, how did I react to that, knowing that kind of my kind of background in following the academy teams and everything. And yeah, it did. It meant that a little bit more. It was great to see them kind of to do that. And I definitely had, like Postecoglou, I was kind of grinning even more with each passing goal, really, just because it's things you love to see. So the win itself, put Spurs into fourth place in that big Europa League table, which helps them out kind of going forward, not least because they missed the playoff games that would have come in the next couple of weeks. So they actually whisper it quietly, they get some midweeks off. Although, and we know it's a big if they would get through to the Carabao Cup final, I think it's the Fulham match, would be brought back to one of those midweeks. So there you go. Kind of their success, they can end up kind of being penalised. But let's be honest, we'd love to get them into a final. So we'll take that if that were to be the payoff. But yes, they now know that they'll face one of these four teams in the round of 16 in March, and they will face either Real Sociedad, pronunciation time, Midtjylland. I may have killed the pronunciation. I'm sorry to everyone from there if I have. Galatasaray and RZ Alkmaar again. Technically just RZ. Someone always told me that you don't say RZ and Alkmaar because it means the same thing. I mean, let me know what you think about those and which of those four you'd prefer. Obviously, I loved going to Istanbul. That was pretty cool. But I don't know if I'd want them to play Galatasaray again. I don't know out of those. Probably anyone other than Galatasaray, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. So the game itself otherwise was pretty unremarkable after those last 15, 20 minutes or so, and the injury. I mean, he tried to give a couple of players a rest, Kulusevski, Bissouma, and who was the other one that came on as well at half time? It was... God, my brain is gone. Honestly, my brain is gone. I know you're telling me right now, probably in comments as you're saying this, but I need to double check because I'm going to go mad. It was the three changes. It was Bissouma, Kulusevski, and oh my goodness, this is so unprofessional. I'm sorry. It was Radu Dragusin. Of course it was Radu Dragusin. That's what you're probably screaming at me right now. You muppet. How have you not remembered it's Dragusin? You even said earlier he wasn't playing in the first half. So yeah, he tried to rest these players. He rested mainly Kulusevski and Dragusin. Bissouma, I think, was more to give him and Bentancur a half each for differing reasons. But yeah, I mean, what else happened in it? Brandon Austin got his first competitive clean sheet. That's not to be sniffed at. That was pretty cool for him. Like I said, Elfsborg sat deep. They only had one real chance. It was a bit of a scare. It was like an overhead kick that went over the bar. I think that the guy got ahead of Dragusin, actually, for that. Elfsborg's keeper, Isaac Pettersson, made a few decent saves. One really good one from Mikey Moore from close range. I think Saar was another one. I feel like there's someone else in the first half. I can't remember who it was. What else? Sonny was really good first half. He ran riot really down the left-hand side, kept getting in behind. And yeah, of course, Dragusin picking up an injury was the other one. It feels like there's a rule, isn't there? Thou shalt not get a player back fit at Tottenham without losing another player in penance for that. And this time it was Radu Dragusin swapping out, tag teaming for Mickey van der Ven coming in. The Dragusin moment was so annoying as well because it looked like the ball curved out of play. Postecoglou was appealing to say it's gone out of play, but it didn't. And weirdly, I probably jinxed it, but I was thinking back in my mind, what if something comes from this? What if a goal comes from it or an injury? And then lo and behold, he does this really awkward kind of, just the way he lands. There was no real challenge. He just kind of pushed forward to get the ball, put his leg awkwardly, and from what I understand, it kind of hyperextended his knee. And obviously we'll now find out, test whether it was anything kind of came of it. It was like, he looked in immediate pain. He was hopping around, really struggling. Then he got some treatment. It looked like, okay, maybe he's going to come back on. But then he did this little thing on the sideline. He did 3 jumps in the air just to see if his kind of knee could handle it. And it was the third one he came down. He was like, oh, no, that really isn't working. That hurts. And so they kind of told him to almost go back on so that he could then go down and then they could get him off and it would kind of stop the game. rather than it all happening in the background and leaving them down to 10 men, which I don't think the Elfsborg coach was very happy with. I mean, Mickey van der Ven hyperextended his knee, different kind of angle earlier in the season. I think it was Everton, wasn't it? And was pretty much fine, I think, if I remember correctly. It certainly wasn't like anything long term, but completely different situation. We don't know what these scans are going to bring back and what we'll find out. But yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Even Postecoglou feigned a hamstring injury at one point. He was kind of trying to get a ball, couldn't get it, and he was like, turned to his bench and went like, holding the back of his leg. He was asked about that afterwards. He said, I nearly did my hamstring, mate. Did you see that? To be fair, if I do it, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, you've still got to enjoy it. It was a great night for the club, a great story to tell. There aren't many European nights when 3 homegrown products get on the score sheet. And of course, it was an evening when, like I said, Mickey van der Ven was back, gave everyone a lift, just played the 45 minutes, which was always pretty much going to be the case because, well, we saw what happened at Chelsea. He was meant to play an hour, ended up playing, was 81, something like that, and we know what happened next. He's only played one match, hasn't he, in 3 months. Yeah, he had this kind of big grin as he came out onto the pitch, and he tweeted afterwards, he just said, words can't describe how happy I am to be back. And he did an interview with the club afterwards that I listened to on the way home. I always have this routine that when I get back to the station, my local station, I drive back, I put on in the background on the speaker system in my car the Spurs play interviews and just listen if there's anything different that comes out of those that we haven't heard elsewhere. And yeah, he did say that in this, that there was one moment he was grinning during the game, and he said mainly it was walking out onto that pitch. He was just missed it so much, and seeing the kind of crowd as he come out the tunnel. And yeah, he didn't have much to do, but what he dealt with solidly enough. Came back to a clean sheet as well, which is great. And yeah, Postecoglou said about those changes at halftime. He said the 3 subs at halftime were all planned. All 3 are okay. We've got a big week coming up, and it's just about trying to manage our players. They've given everything they possibly can. Unfortunately, Radu's hurt his knee now. I don't have any further information, but it didn't look good as he was coming off. We'll have to wait and see, but it is disappointing. Mickey got through it fine. It was always going to be 45, and he felt fine. He's a quality player. You could see already he's got a presence out there with the injured guys. We've got quite a few that are long-termers, and they just want to help. So they're coming in with real positive energy, which helps the other boys. Hopefully, over the next 2 weeks, we get some more bodies back, which certainly help us inject some energy into the group. I think Postecoglou said today, if I remember correctly, he was asked whether Mickey van der Ven can start again at the weekend so quickly after this. And he kind of essentially said, he can't play 90, but he certainly will get minutes again in that game. You would think he starts. Having just got 45, you could probably then give him 60, can't you? Maybe 70. Just got to be so careful with him, because obviously that's going to be a much more physical, faster game than this was. In terms of energy for other players, I thought it was really good for Richarlison to get a good 80-something minutes in his legs. I'm trying to remember, because he went to left wing. Scarlett replaced Dragishin, and then he went to the left. And there was a bit of a scary period where they were trying to get him off, but they kept him on because there was a corner, which they know with his heading ability, a defensive header, a defensive corner, you keep him on for his heading ability. But he kind of then ended up playing another 4 or 5 minutes or so because the ball just wouldn't get out of play. And you're just thinking this would be so Spurs if he gets an injury at this point. But he didn't, and it will be good for his legs to have got that kind of those minutes in him, because right now he is their striker. It's all they've got available, and he's working hard and holding the ball up well. Didn't really have any clear-cut chances I can think of, but hopefully against Brentford he will. Someone else who had a lot of energy, maybe too much, was Lucas Bergvall. I say too much early on in the game. He's getting a little bit of a hard time, I think, from the Elfsborg fans, obviously coming from his homeland, from one of the rival clubs to his former clubs, Djurgården and Brommapojkarna, both Stockholm clubs, and Elfsborg are not. They're much further down the country. And they were giving him a few little jeers and ironic cheers when he lost the ball and stuff. And he kind of started to try too hard. He played some Hollywood passes, like showy passes that didn't reach anyone. You could see Postecoglou getting annoyed or frustrated anyway. And there was a few times that he said to him, just like, calm down, settle down a bit. And I presume he said that at half time, but Bergvall definitely second half was far calmer and got another 94-5 minutes into his legs as well. He gives everything, he really does, and he sought him out after the final whistle, Postecoglou, and gave him a big hug, and he looked absolutely spent at the full-time whistle, Bergvall. Worrying at one point, looked to be holding his groin, but nothing's kind of come out of that at the moment. It's. I asked Postecoglou today about kind of him telling him a few times to settle down and whether he thought the Swedish fans had got into his head. And he said, I don't speak Swedish, mate, so I've got no idea. But no, look, he's 18 years old. He's such an exciting player. But I think like any young player, he made a couple of mistakes early on and he just wanted to atone for those mistakes. He dug himself into a bit of a hole where he was trying to do things a little bit too complicated. And the message was just to get him to settle down, keep his game simple and get his rhythm back. The thing is with Lucas is that even when he's making those mistakes, he works awfully hard and never stops running. It's such a great asset for him. Probably in his mind, it was a big game for him. Of course it was, but playing against the club for his own country. But that's the reason we're exposing these guys. The more experiences like that, the better, and they'll be able to deal with them further down the track. I mean, he has had that. He's had Galatasaray as well, hasn't he? Which was a big experience for all the players involved in that as well. Sorry, just looking to see. There's more Tomori stuff as we go on. It says, yeah, I think it's all through suggestions that it's all through intermediaries at the moment rather than anything too formal yet. But yeah, we'll see. There's going to be loads more to come out. There's going to be loads more names. What's this one? This is someone saying, I see, a verbal agreement for tomorrow. We'll see. We'll see. Honestly, it's one of these situations where I could wait and wait and wait forever to do a video. And things can just change as we're doing them constantly. This is the worry about transfer window videos. But yeah, unfortunately, this was the only period of time I had. So some of the stuff may date, especially the Tomori stuff. We'll see. It's mad how kind of quickly it kind of goes. Often it's probably because, it's probably because the information maybe was a little bit out of date to begin with. I can't imagine with each passing minute these things are updating or people getting the info. But hey, who knows in the current world of football? But yeah, talk about Lucas Bergvall. Him and Archie Gray stepped up. I'm sorry, I know there's a lot of kind of going here, there, and everywhere with this one, but it's unfortunately is the nature of it. Having the stuff going on in the background. It's. I think Tomori randomly, is represented by the same people, the Czech company that represent Kinski. I think, if I'm not mistaken, which is very random, but I think it is the case. But yeah, Archie Gray stepped up again. They played him as a centre-back on the right for Van der Ven and Ben Davies as a left-back. I just get a more natural balance with right-footers, left-footers. Be interesting to see what happens on Sunday against Brentford and if Dragusin appears to be out. He said, Postecoglou said he's not likely to be able to play at the weekend. Do you go with two left-footers in Van der Ven and Davies, which is quite awkward? Or do you have Archie Gray play as a centre-back again? And then Ben Davies maybe plays as a left-back, or Jed Spence plays there, or Jed Spence gives Pedro Porro a rest, perhaps, and Davies plays as a left-back, or Davies is on the bench and replaces Van der Ven after an hour, perhaps. There's quite a few possibilities for him there. Again, let me know in the comments what you think should happen and the way they should go about it. But look, kind of getting away from the fact that last night was all about those three academy products. For Dane Scarlett especially, it's 4 years in the making for him. He's only 20, but he's been around for 4 years. it was in this competition, Europa League, that he made history as the youngest player to appear in a competitive game for Tottenham before Alfie Devine beat that record a couple of months later. Dane came on against Ludogorets November 2020, which is mad. Later that season, he would become the youngest player since Kylian Mbappe to get an assist in the competition. He teed up Carlos Vinicius for a goal against Wolfsberger. We know, I've spoken about it before, he's had praise from the likes of Mourinho, Conte. They loved him. They just thought what a great player he was going to become. But for one reason or another, the loans he's had, Portsmouth, Ipswich, Oxford, they just haven't really worked. Little bits and pieces, little runs of goals, little glimpses of what he could become. But I think he's been unfortunate with circumstances. I mean, two of those clubs, they changed managers at. I mean, that does you no good whatsoever, especially when you've brought in by a certain manager. And maybe at Ipswich kind of was the opposite thing, that he was coming into a very settled team that had already won promotion and kind of was flying again, and he wasn't part of that, and then the opportunities for him were less to kind of break into it. And the plan was, when he came back from Oxford this month, was that he was going to head out on loan again, and then something just kind of changed this week. And as soon as you saw him on the bench last night, that kind of changed everything, because if he were to come on, which he did, suddenly he's played for two clubs, and you cannot play for three clubs in a season. So the moment because I'd been saying that to some of the other guys in the media, explaining, he's on that bench. If he comes on, that's it. He has to stay. And as soon as someone spotted him, I think it was Dan Kilpatrick from the Evening Standard, he spotted him kind of getting his bib off and ready to come on, and he kind of shouted across. He was like, "It's coming on! It's coming on!" That's kind of exciting stuff we deal with in the press box. But it's clearly he's made a decision this week that, okay, we'll let Will Lancashire head out on loan, and Dane's going to come back with us for a while. And I asked him kind of pretty much what changed his mind, what happened this week to do that, and he said, we had a look at this is Postecoglou, we had a look at his situation. He's had a couple of disappointing loans. I think sending him out again without any sort of real prospect of him developing, we just felt, let's keep him training with us and give him an opportunity to train with us and play with us and see how it goes. He actually admitted in his club interview that he hadn't come back in the best condition. I don't know whether that's just because of the lack of football or what, but I think they've been kind of working quite hard in the last week or so to get him back into the shape that he needs to be for this style of football, but this brand of football. But yeah, he's a popular guy around the club. They kind of all do quite believe in him. And when he scored that goal, the delight for him on the bench as well as on the pitch was clear to see. And then obviously got goal and assist because he teed up Ajayi as well. And Kulusevski was talking about the young players after the game. He kind of singled out Dane. He said, I think they have to listen as young players, as into the senior players. But the most important thing is they come and give everything they can. They change the game. And I love Dane Scarlett a lot. I think he's a great player. And I believe he will help us these months. It was a great goal. So I'm very happy for him. Also, the other players that scored, they have to give the energy now. We have lots of injuries and they did an amazing job today. I mean, everyone at Spurs believes in Scarlett. And, Mourinho once said that he was going to be his tip for, I think he was putting him as an outside tip to be at the last World Cup at that when he was asked. That was, a couple of years before that. He's got that kind of ability. It just hasn't worked for him. He's kind of made his mark for the under-21s this season, during that little purple patch he had for Oxford earlier in the season. And it's now just about realising his potential. Who knows? It would be amazing if this moment was the one that changed it all for him. And sometimes you find that players maybe, we saw it with Harry Kane, maybe he didn't quite work, and I'm not comparing the two, but certainly in terms of loans, Harry Kane struggled with some of his loans, but yet on the he kept working away, and then on the biggest stage, suddenly found that actually suited him even more. And who knows? That could be what we see with Dane. That would be amazing. But mainly, I think the key is for the club to know you can't rely on him. As in, you can't put all that pressure on him to be the other striker right now. They need to bring in another attacker that can play up front as well, and have Dane as another option as well, and help him and let him develop at his pace. As for Lancashire, he'll be He'll be heading off now on loan. I'll get messages galore. Let me check what this is. I was just looking at some other bits and pieces. Right. Sorry. It's one of those videos. I know. I kind of see it as a bit of a live video. This one, rather than just a one take, bit more structured. As much as these videos are structured. But yeah, Lancashire. Understand Burnley, Middlesbrough, West Brom, Cardiff, and Luton among the teams that are interested in him. I put that out last night. That's probably moved on a little bit since then, and we'll kind of find out. There's a few clubs from abroad that are interested as well, but I think Spurs were quite keen for him to play in the Championship, get that physical kind of exposure in a fast, kind of physical league that will help him going forward. So we'll see what that is. Again, it's not my decision. I probably would have preferred to see him go to maybe League One. I just hope he gets minutes in the Championship. It may be brilliant for him. He may just get in the Championship and absolutely smash it, get loads of minutes, and it's great. I just wonder whether he needed a bit of a Jamie Donnelly style loan, and just a league below, just to find his feet with lots of senior football. But hey, it could work and be absolutely brilliant. But we shall find out on Lancashire. I mean, he and Dane Scott, they've kind of been around the scene for a little while now. We're aware of them. And I think for a lot of fans maybe that don't keep an eye on the under-21s football or under-18s football, might not have known of Damola Ajayi. He became the 893rd player to play for Spurs last night in a competitive game. And it was just brilliant. I'm so happy for him. It's fantastic. You know, he's not a kind of a sudden, overnight, here he is thing. He's worked really hard over recent seasons. Signed a new contract about 4 weeks ago as well. And to have this debut and his goal and a new contract all this month, what a brilliant January he's had. And it was a brilliant goal as well. And he's kind of been growing in confidence with the under-18s in recent years. Last season, he had a big campaign for them. 24 goal involvements in 30 games, 16 goals and 8 assists in that. Made the move up to Wayne Burnett's under-21 side this season. And a bit more difficult as he's kind of had to step up to it. 3 goals, 1 assist in 15 matches. But we've also got to be aware that it's a tough time for the under-21s right now. They've been shorn of a lot of the kind of more experienced senior, if you will, of the under-21s team players. And he did himself the world of good last night. It was brilliant. And, despite the fact that Brendan Johnson's kind of almost back, he's kind of put his name forward now as someone that late in games against tired defences, why not? Why not throw him on there? He's proved that now on a big stage that he can do something like that. It's great for him. He looked so delighted after the game, watching him walking around the pitch, doing the celebrations. Also his interviews. There was a really kind of nice one where they had him looking through photos of his celebration of the goal. And he was almost even more excited to see that, look, on the pitch with Kulusevski and Porro, it's like mad and all this guy. It's really, really nice. He was just marvelling at the fact that he's kind of on that stage and, hopefully gets more chances. But even if it doesn't, that's probably going to set up the rest of his professional career for him, really. Because even if it doesn't work for Tottenham in the long run, he'll have that. Other clubs will look at him and things like that. But hopefully it happens at Spurs. But just saying, that's almost like a calling card for him now, which is amazing. In front of whatever it was, 57,000 fans. Brilliant. And then we had Mikey Moore to put the seal on the night. With that kind of goal, he's scored a fair few times for the under-18s. He loves running centrally through the pitch, but obviously he's being kind of used as a winger under Postecoglou, but he actually kind of often plays more centrally. And so for him, he knows what to do when he gets near the box in that kind of position. He absolutely smashed it. And it was a tough game for him, actually. He started really well. And he kind of was really going at his man, getting in behind. It was great. Then he went through this sticky period for maybe a good 45, 50 minutes, maybe an hour in the middle of the game, where just couldn't get the rhythm again, was losing the ball, struggling a little bit. And then he has that amazing moment. He just knew he wouldn't want to be left out of all the kind of cool stuff going on at the end of the game. And he actually admitted that in the celebrations in his club interview, he cramped up. He was just like so knackered because, he played, 94 minutes or so. And I think he was delighted that they blew the final whistle with the referee as they were going back to the centre circle. Brilliant, though. Like, kind of a knee slide, ended up kind of on his backside, didn't he? And like I said, just looked really emotional. It was just brilliant for him. And he became the youngest English goal scorer in major European competition, beating Jimmy Greaves by 73 days. Postecoglou was asked whether the goal will have a big impact on him now for the second half of the season. He said, yeah, I think so. I think he started the game really well, but he had a bit of a struggle after that. But he's 17, and that's just part of his growth. Getting a goal will, I'm sure, give him confidence. He's been good for us in this tournament, and the early part of it, he was a big part of what we were doing. That's the tournament competition. He's 17, and if he keeps developing and we nurse him along and protect him along the way, he's got all the attributes to be an outstanding talent for us. He'll remember tonight, which is great. Scoring a goal at home and in Europe is great for him, but he knows he's still got a lot of work to do, and we're going to help him. I watched, like I said, listened to all three of the young players' interviews on the way back. I actually watched them again this morning just to kind of see the mannerisms and everything. And what just struck me, what I found incredible, Mikey's the youngest of the bunch, but he's such an old 17. He really is. If you watch it, he's kind of doing his interview. At points, he's like, yeah. And it's just like kind of crossing his arms, got his microphone. He looks so comfortable in that environment, which is mad. When I was 17, I never could have even done anything resembling that. And yeah, he's just so laid back. There's a touch of James Maddison about him and the way he talks when he does that. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think Madders has kind of taken a bit of an interest in his development as well. He said that before, about offering him advice and things like that. And yeah, he kind of had a bit of the Madders about him. And yeah, it's just lovely to see. So happy for him. They're all good lads as well. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but they are. Everyone speaks so highly of all three of them. And this is what hard work brings, and it is brilliant for them. And long may it continue. Postecoglou was asked after the game about, could the academy be a way through this current, the problems? And he said, I don't know if we've got any more, mate. I don't know of many teams that are finishing European games like us with 5 or 6 teenagers on the field. It's a challenge for us, but credit to the lads. They're just cracking on with it, and the young boys are taking their opportunities. They'll all bear fruit in time. This exposure we've given them, the growth they've made, I'm sure they'll all be encouraged, and I think the rest of the academy will too. The young players in there, because they've seen the players they're sharing a dressing room with scoring for Tottenham on a European night. I'm sure it will give a boost to the whole place. Postecoglou will be happy for them, excited for them, but he'll be very wary of that's not the answer to what's going on right now. That's a lovely little bonus, but they need players to come in his remaining 3-4 days or so of the window. Where are we at? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 days. Apparently now Italian media saying it's just waiting on Tomori to make his decision. We'll see. He was actually asked, Postecoglou, after the game whether he was worried Spurs might use those 3 players scoring, the young players, as an excuse not to get the checkbook out. And he kind of laughed. He said, no, I keep saying it has been and still is a tough period in terms of our league form, but there has been real growth, I believe. It will come to fruition at a point. I'm just so certain and bullish about that. The young players, the growth in our whole group is going to be enormous. It will be a fruit, a reward. It will be a fruit. It will be a fruition. I think that's meant to be. I've got no doubt about that. It will be a fruit. That sounds weird. Right now, it's about trying to address the issues we've got at hand. They have made a signing for the academy, or they're about to. I wanted to put this in. I don't want to put this with the other stuff because otherwise people take it as a first team signing. It's very much one for the academy. And the under-21s, it's 18-year-old Man City attacking midfielder Dan Batty. He is a base client, as another one of them to the long list of players at Spurs. He's got 3 goals, 3 assists from 10 games for City's under-18s. And it looks like he's heading towards Tottenham on I think it's a free transfer with some maybe compensation as part of that as well. But yeah, very much for the academy. Spurs need senior new recruits. They do, extra bodies. And like I said, Johan Langer's way of working, I think, is probably going to, it's some would say maybe too quiet way of working, because it hasn't brought anyone to the club as of yet in terms of outfield players. It will likely throw out more candidates in these last 3 days from left field and out the woodwork. And yeah, it's just, I said it in the last video, the key is to not make this transfer window like the one in 2018-19, those 2 windows, when Spurs should have pushed on and they didn't, and it ended up being so pivotal to what happened next. And I can see this being a similar window. If they don't do a couple of things before this window ends, I think it's going to have a knock-on effect beyond the next couple of weeks. I feel it's that important. And all eyes are on Daniel Levy, Johan Langer, the powers that be at the club, just to show they've learned from past mistakes. We'll see. As I've said before, I don't know whether past mistakes are always learned from at Tottenham. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Time to head off. Like I said, even before this is published, the Tomori stuff, it takes a good 45 minutes, an hour for these to upload in all. By the time it's uploaded, some more stuff could be out of date. He could have rejected it. He could have approved it. It could be anything that's happened. We could have new names in the frame with Spurs. But I still felt I needed to talk after the game. This was my little kind of window to do it. And I thought I'll chuck some transfer stuff in there, fully of the knowledge that it could be out of date. So apologies if it is, but it's the name of the game, unfortunately. I don't know if I'm going to have to do another video before everything closes up the window. We'll see. Obviously, tomorrow, maybe, if stuff were to happen tomorrow, I could do a short one. Sunday, I'm at Brentford. I've got to work, got the game, and then deadline day, I am working. And as you know, these are done in my spare time. So the next bit of spare time will not be until Tuesday night. So it might be an after one. But yeah, keep an eye on my social media feeds and all that sort of stuff for any other latest stuff. But in the meantime, let's see what Spurs do, and let's see if they can actually get somewhere with all of this. God, Alan St. Maximin's name coming up as well. Not for Spurs. Not for Spurs. I'd absolutely forgotten. I think he might be going to Napoli. I'd forgotten he was went to. Wait a minute, where is he at? Napoli. That's mad, isn't it? You kind of forget these players have kind of headed off. Sorry, I don't know why I need to look that up. He's at Fenerbahce on loan from the Saudi Pro League. That was it as well. I knew it didn't seem right that he was actually at either of those clubs. Sorry, so many diversions in these ones. The people that get frustrated when I head off in different directions are going to be absolutely livid with this video. But don't point that at me. Be livid with Tottenham right now, because quite frankly, the transfer window has been an absolute mess. Fingers crossed it still ends in some kind of positive way. But 2 quite public rejections are not good. Not good. But hey, we had a really enjoyable end to the match last night. And that's what I'm going to cling to. I've got a day off tomorrow, so things may happen tomorrow. Always a day off on the weekend day that isn't a match. So maybe Spurs pull something out of the bag and make me do a bit of work. I wouldn't mind it if it's something decent. Time to head off. I'm definitely flagging, as you can probably tell. So as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.